Hello there and welcome back to another episode of How to Adam Audio. Today we want to take a closer look at the positioning of a studio monitor in a stereo system. So we are going to talk about the stereo triangle, the sweet spot, orientation of monitors, and finding the right distance between your speaker and wall. Most of you have probably heard this term before. So let me recap a little bit. When you reproduce a stereo signal via two loudspeakers, the sound coming from the two speakers overlaps and adds up in the room. When we as humans now listen to this on the center line between the two loudspeakers, it creates a remarkable spatial impression. As you can see, a triangle can be formed from these two lines. This so-called stereo triangle ideally has three equal 60-degree angles, with a typical edge length ranging from 1 to 2.5 meters, depending whether you're using near-field or mid-field monitors. Ideally, the listener should be located in the so-called sweet spot, which is right on the center line between the two speakers. A popular misconception is that the listening distance should be equal to the distance between the speakers, which is the loudspeaker base, which is wrong. In fact, you should sit closer than that, just at the front tip of the stereo triangle. Now, the distance between the listening position, the sweet spot, and the center of the loudspeaker base can be easily calculated by multiplying the loudspeaker base by a factor of 0.87. For example, if your speaker base is 1.5 meters wide, your speakers are 1.5 meters apart, you just multiply that by 0.87, which gives you an ideal listening distance of around 1.3 meters. Of course, depending on the design and properties of your speakers and room, this listening spot may be also closer to the speakers or further away from them to give you an optimum result. This is where experimenting with your own equipment helps to achieve the optimum. Also, keep in mind your setup should be symmetrical in itself and best also symmetrical in your room. Also important, positioning the tweeters or acoustic axis of your speakers at ear height so that your ears are directly in front of the speakers. The directional pattern of sound emanating from the speaker, known as dispersion characteristics, can heavily color the sound as you move away from the front or center of the speaker. Usually, speakers are optimized for a specific listening angle, and this is where your ears should be. So, for the most consistent and best sound, set things up so you're facing the speakers at ear level. If your console or desk won't allow you to get your monitor speakers high enough, use speaker stands to elevate them or at least tilt them to make them aim at your ear level. Next, we're going to talk about vertical and horizontal orientation of studio monitors. My primary argument here would be the consistency of sound when you as a listener move around at your desk. Most speaker designs are more robust and sound more consistent when you move away from the sweet spot when they're being used according to their intended orientation. That is because speakers using multiple transducers have crossover regions which describe the frequency range where two drivers reproducing adjacent frequency bands meet and overlap. The relative timing of these drivers is vital to an even response and has been aligned during development with great care. When these two drivers sit next to each other, side by side, and you move from the sweet spot to the side, the relative time alignment is offset, which creates steep notches in the frequency range of the crossover region. The frequency of these notches changes according to your listening position. This is true for crossover points from tweeters to mid-range or from tweeters to woofers in two-way designs. Therefore, this problem alters the sound of your audio, which makes it harder for you to come to consistent decisions. When you go to your side rack, you will listen to something else than your sweet spot, and that will make it hard to make a decision. To avoid that problem, most speaker designs you can find out there have the tweeter vertically arranged above or below the mid-range or woofer. So placing your monitors intended to be upright on the side and vice versa will lead to varying audio coloration once you're leaving the sweet spot, and this is something you would like to avoid. Here we come to a different question, which has no definitive answer that fits all speakers and environments. Looking at active speakers, I'd say you start at a 10 centimeter distance between the wall and the back of your speaker just to prevent overheating and maintain sufficient cooling. At this distance, a rear-facing vent will already work properly since it won't be mechanically blocked, and the low-frequency sounds radiated from the vent will just band around the enclosure to reach the listener. Once we're talking about solid walls, there will always be some level of interaction between the speaker and the wall, with the distance just defining the frequency range that will be impacted by the problem of the sound that is reflected back from the wall, overlapping the sound coming directly from the speaker. If you would like to learn more about how this works and how it affects your sound, please leave a comment and we'll make a separate video on it. Generally speaking, I prefer to stay either closer to a wall or be rather far away, but not put the speaker within 0.5 to 1.5 meters, because this will result in a problem showing between 60 Hz and 160 Hz, which I'd like to avoid. If you put the speaker closer to wall than 0.5 meters, it will result in a problem showing below 60 Hz, which is not that problematic, because your speaker might not even work so much down there. If you put your speaker further away than 1.5 meters, it will result in a problem that is already targeting the mid-range, and it's not that problematic for bass response anymore. Let's wrap things up by talking about a pretty popular rule of thumb which helps you finding an ideal listening spot in your room. I'm talking about the 38% rule by Wess-Laschaud. It is a theoretical optimum listening position in rectangular rooms that you can find at 38% of the room's length facing the shorter wall. So to find that in your room, you just calculate 38% of your room's length and put a mark at this point back from your front wall, centered between the left and the right side walls. Like most rules of thumb, it's based on compromise, but it gives you a really good starting point for your room setup. As always, you might want to rely on your ears to judge whether playing around with these concepts as starting points can further improve the sound and reliability of your system. I hope you enjoyed this and you could take something away from the video. Please let us know what you think and also leave your ideas and questions you would like us to cover down in the comment section. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Tschüss!